There are formulas that you can write that will calculate specific formulas only if certain statements are true. For example, on this sheet, as flower inventory runs low, one of the florists marks the order status of an item to order. K wants the spreadsheet to automatically calculate the needed quantity of flowers to order in column E based on what has been used and what the quantity to keep on hand is when an item is flagged for order. So therefore, if it says order in column D, she wants to subtract column B from column C to get the total quantity needed to reorder. So if you look in column B, let's look at column B5, we know what the quantity remaining is of our inventory of roses. We also know in column C what the quantity is needed to keep the business running. So Kay knows she wants to order these. So when it says order in D, then she wants in column E for it to automatically take column C, so C5, and subtract B5 from it. To do this, we need to use what's called an if statement. An if statement is an if function. Here's the syntax for an if function. This is a little different than the sum and average function that we were using. So let's look at what criteria falls within the open and closed parenthesis of this function. First of all, you would type equals and the word if because it's an if function. Then you'd open your parenthesis. The first criteria it needs is a logic test. The logic test is basically, what do you want me to go out and find or look for? In this case, we want to look and see if cell D5 was equal to the word order. Then you put a comma. Commas always separate your criteria within a function. The next syntax or criteria needed is the value if true. So in other words, if the cell D5 does equal the word order, what would we like it to do? We want it to calculate C5 minus B5. Then we put a comma to move to the next criteria. The last criteria is the value if false. In other words, if none of that is true, what do we want to happen? In this case, we just want it to simply display a 0. So to start our if function, we're going to click on cell E5. Now, if we're not quite sure how to type this function out because we've never done it, we can use some help. We'll use that function arguments dialog box, and we can get to it by clicking on the logical button in the function library. Next, we'll select if from the drop-down menu. In the function arguments dialog box, we need to type our first criteria, in other words, the logic test. So we want to make sure that D5 equals order. We also have to put order in quotation marks because we want it to literally look for that word. So go ahead and we'll type D5 equals order with quotes around it. In the next criteria for our value if true, we want to type C5 minus B5. In other words, if it does say order in the D column, we want to subtract B5 from C5. Next, we need to type our false value, which is 0, meaning that if it doesn't equal the word order, we want 0 to appear in the cell. And then we'll click the OK button to finish our formula. Look in the formula bar of your spreadsheet and you'll notice the function has now been inserted with the appropriate equal sign, the open and closed parentheses, and the commas where they need to go. Let's try to now do the exact same function, but this time we're going to type it rather than using the function library. So let's go to cell E6. When you start typing your function, as soon as you open your first parenthesis after the function name, you'll notice that the needed syntax or criteria pops up in a screen tip for you. So it says it needs a logic test. So we'll type our logic test of D6 equals order. We need to make sure we use quotes around order. Then we type a comma to move to the next value. For the value if true, we want C6 minus B6. If we type a comma, that moves us to the last criteria, which is the value of false, and we want that to be 0. We need to make sure we close our parenthesis when we're done. When we press enter, we'll see our result.